Shalom, Stiebel Wonder Gardeners. It's been a long time. This is Rabbi Ben Newman, ready to give you a little background for what we're going to be discussing on Saturday. Saturday, the 10th of March, we will be meeting at the church again, and I'm pushing up the time to 4 o'clock because the church is booked until 3:30, and then we'll have to get in there and get set up. So we're gonna meet there at 4 o'clock. If you want to come a little early and help us set up, that's great too. The topic for this week is nedivut, or generosity. You can find the texts for this week's session if you go to http://generosity, and then the password is wonder, WONDER. And that should put you right into the page. It should look like this. Nedivut, generosity. Here's some texts on Nedivut. So I'm going to discuss this a little bit just to give you some background for Saturday. So first of all, Nedivut should be, or generosity should be distinguished from tzedakah or gemilut chasadim. Tzedakah means charity or righteousness, but in this context, charity, meaning giving money to charity, and gemilut chasadim means doing good deeds. So even though tzedakah and gemilut chasadim might come from a generous feeling that you have in your heart, a feeling of nedivut, they're not dependent on it. You don't have to have a generous feeling in your heart to give tzedakah or to do good deeds. You just have to do them. They are just mitzvot. So then that brings up the question: if tzedakah doesn't depend on nedivut, does it really matter if you have nedivut or generosity? Can you just give and not have a generous heart about it? And the answer here that they give in this text is generosity can motivate us to go beyond the letter of the law, and it means doing more than just what is required of you, and it also makes you maybe do a little bit better whatever you're doing for somebody if you're doing it out of a generous motive than if you're just doing it because you have to. So that will be sort of one of the central questions we'll talk about on Saturday. Do you need to actually have nedivut, or can you just give charity and do good deeds because that's what it means to be a good person? So we'll talk about that. And we will also talk a bit about some texts from the Torah that discuss nedivut or generosity. There's one text in Genesis when Abraham instructs Eliezer, his servant, to go to find a wife for Isaac. Rebecca, who will actually eventually be the wife of Isaac, is very generous with him. She helps him, she feeds him, and she gives enough straw and food and room to lodge in. And then he's generous back to her. So that's one example. Another example is from the Parsha of this week, which is Vayakhel, and it's the building of the Mishkan, the tabernacle in the desert, the sort of temple structure that they had in the desert, and everybody gives free will gifts from their heart in order to build the temple, and they end up giving more than is required of them. And that again brings up the question, is it better that they gave gifts of their heart, that it was out of their generosity that they gave their gifts, or would it have been okay if they just gave because they had to give? Is there any distinction between giving for those different reasons? So here it says in the text, what kind of gifts does God want? Are gifts from the heart and gifts not from the heart equally valid, equally acceptable to God? In what ways does generosity bring God's presence near? So then there's another text here from the rabbis from the book Pirkei Avot, which is one of the most famous books by the rabbis. about tzedakah, and how tzedakah might be reflecting somebody's generosity or might not. Among those who give tzedakah, there are four types of people: those who want to give but do not want others to give. They begrudge the mitzvah to fellow human beings. Those who want others to give but do not themselves give, they begrudge the mitzvah to themselves. Those who want to give and want others to give, they are saintly people. Those who do not want others to give and do not give themselves give, they are scoundrels. So, based on these four types of givers, where do you think the majority of people fall? Is it in one category or another category? Do you think saintly people, the best sort of people that want everybody to give, can be made, or are people born that way? And that brings us to the next text, which is from the holy Jew, Hayid HaKadosh, Rabbi Yaakov Yitzchak of Pshiska, who said that people should train themselves to be good-hearted and giving. Start with something small. For example, accustom yourself to giving others a little of your snuff tobacco. Then do a little more, like letting them enjoy the use of your pipe, and so on by degrees until gradually you're in the habit of being generous. So here's another question: can you train yourself to be generous? Is that even possible? What he's asking here, or is it something that's just inborn, that you're just generous because you're born that way? And then finally, we're going to be discussing the 8 levels of charity from Maimonides. And Maimonides said that there are these 8 levels. The first is sort of the lowest level, that the person who's giving is actually, they give, but they're really pained by the fact that they have to give. Like, they don't really want to give. They're like, oh, I'm giving, but this is such a pain. The 7th level, the person who gives less, but than he should, but he does so cheerfully. So he doesn't give a lot of money, but he's very happy about the fact that he gives it, or she gives it. The 6th level, the donor gives after being asked. So they have to actually be asked to give. Level 5, the person who gives without being asked. Level 4, even higher, the person who's receiving the charity knows the person who's giving, but the person who's giving doesn't know the person who's receiving. The 3rd level, even higher, the person who's giving knows the person who's receiving, but the person who's receiving but does not know the person who's giving. Level 2 is a case in which neither the person giving the charity nor the person receiving the charity know each other. And then the highest level of charity is that the donor, the person who's giving, gives the person who's receiving the ability to become self-supporting. So it's like that old adage: give a man a fish and he'll eat for a day. Teach a man to fish and he'll eat for a lifetime. So this is more like teaching a man to fish. This is sort of making a person self-supporting. So those are the 8 levels of charity. Again, we're going to be discussing if it really matters whether somebody has a generous heart when they're giving, or if it doesn't. Please come, having watched this video. I hope to see you here at the church on March 10th at 4 o'clock, or a little bit earlier if you'd like to help set up. Thank you very much. Take care, you guys.